This is a story that starts off being about babysitting and one girl's dream of getting out of the house and ends up being about so many different kinds of things. We got this letter from a man in Florida named Myron Jones, who said that back when he was 16 years old, growing up in Buffalo, New York, without a dad, raised by his mom, he was allowed to stay out till midnight. Came and went as he pleased, spent a lot of time in bars. This is the 1940s. And his sister Carol, his older sister, had all different rules when she was let out of the house at all.
She had to say exactly where she was going, who she was going with. She could go to church dances, but only some church dances. It all had to do with protecting her chastity, really.
Yeah. Yeah, if one were to ask your mother at the time, what would she have said?
I think she said, you got to be more careful with the girls.
Yeah.
Spelled Pregnant. So my sister figured out a little scheme. She invented a family called the McCrearys. Said they needed her to babysit. And I remember when she first told me about it, she said, listen, guess what I did? I made up a family. I said, what do you mean? I made up this family I babysit for. They're called the McCrearys.
It seemed clear once I got talking to Myron Jones that his sister Carol might have a few thoughts about all this. And we gave her a call. She agreed to go into his studio and chat. She says, if anything, her brother was understating just how strict their mother was with her.
She used to follow me. She had a friend. We called them Sam Spade and the Fat Man, and they would follow us. And then I'd go home, and she'd come in and say, well, where have you been? It was really, really hard. She didn't believe anything I ever said.
And were you a pretty good, kid, good student in school?
I was. I for a long time I thought that, I was terrible. My mother started calling me a whore before I had any idea what the word was. And I couldn't look it up because I didn't know how it was spelled. I couldn't find it.
Wow.
And so it occurred to me that if I had a family, a non-existent family, I could say I was going there.
Carol started working out the details because whenever she babysat, my mother had to have the phone number so she could check up on her. So the man in the family was an FBI agent working on a top secret project. So he could not give his phone number to anyone at all. He also couldn't let anyone, but my sister, the babysitter, know just where they lived. It would have been dangerous for him to do so.
So how far did this go? How complicated did the story of the McCrearys get?
It got very complicated. They had two kids. Michael was 3 and Laura was 2.
Mm-hmm.
Happened to be the age separation between my sister and myself, but it was reversed.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the little boy in particular would try to test us, and I'd let him get away with it, but my sister wouldn't. And they had all kinds of toys, but not too many toys. And they liked their parents very much, loved their parents. They were easy. They weren't spoiled in any way. And
they sound like very special kids.
Oh, yeah, they were great. Yeah, they were like no kids I ever met, really. I think in many ways they had the life my sister wished that we'd had.
I had them rent a cottage at the lake for the summer.
So the McCrearys had a summer house.
Ah, yes.
and did they require your services at the summer house?
Oh,
the
yes, indeed. They knew that kids would enjoy it so much more if we were there. And it was we, because both my brother and I always liked little kids a lot, you know. So my mother would accept this quite readily, you know, that they wanted the both of us out at the lake. It was wonderful. We had such a good summer. I mean, it was glorious.
What would you do?
Well, we sometimes if we knew someone out there, sometimes kids we knew would have cottages. You know, kids used to get together and chip in, or their parents would have a cottage. Sometimes we'd just sleep on the beach, which was great. I loved that. I loved sleeping on the beach.
I have to say, every time you talk about the freedom you got, your voice becomes completely different. It's like you can still taste it.
I still remember what that was like. It offered freedom that was just so wonderful to me.
We really got all of this from our mother. This notion of fantasy people. Our mother had, from the time we were young kids, younger than 10, our mother had 3 people that she went to see, none of whom existed, and we always knew they didn't exist.
Really?
Yeah.
Who were they?
One was a lawyer, and she wouldn't say what she was doing there, but she dropped little hints. And what we were supposed to believe was that was making arrangements to put us in the orphanage. The second person she saw was a psychiatrist, which she pronounced psychometrist. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And she went there because he would tell her that we were driving her crazy.
I see.
And the third person was a doctor who told her she was going to die. And we have no idea where, in fact, she went, but she was never gone long enough to see anyone at all.
So in other words, she would literally, this wasn't just something she would say to you, well, I've been to a psychiatrist and he tells me that you guys are driving me crazy. She would actually leave the house and go to her appointment?
Yeah, she'd go for the door, and when we were very young, we'd say, where are you going, Ma? Because it was so unusual for her to go out except to work. And she'd say, wouldn't you like to know? Oh, okay. Is it your doctor? As we got older, she'd say, maybe. And so that was her game.
In retrospect, where do you think she was going?
I have no idea. I think she walked around the block a couple of times.
So at some point your mother must have wanted to meet them, right?
No. She was shy isn't the word for her, but she didn't like knowing people at all. She didn't know the people next door. She didn't want to know them. So she was really deliberately isolated. But the McCrearys were far and away a favorite topic of conversation. Our mother would ask questions about them, and then Carol would give her far more information than she asked for.
Say more of what you remember of what she would tell them.
Well, one was that Mrs. McCreary was very intelligent and lovely and very kind, and she was my sister's fantasy of a mother.
Yeah.
And she was my fantasy of an older woman who might fall in love with me and with any luck at all seduce me.
So wait, would you talk about it with your mom too?
Yeah, my sister started that. I was a little uncomfortable about it. My sister said, I think he's got a crush on her. And I would almost blush uncomfortably because I did.
And then your mom would ask you questions, for example, well, what color hair does she have?
No, she didn't ask questions like that. She never asked questions like that.
So what would she ask?
She'd say, well, I hope you act right over there. What do they think of you? And then the question she, to this day, asks, oh, what do they think of your mother? And Carol would say, give the right answer, which was, they think you're wonderful. It was a way of having a conversation with her.
And a kind of in-depth conversation.
That's right. She liked to hear about fancy people. She imagined somehow that maybe it would all rub off on Carol.
Huh. That they'd be a good influence somehow.
They'd be a good influence, and there might even be some money in it. But Carol also handled, because she wasn't getting any money from babysitting, she said that Mr. McCreary was taking all the babysitting money and putting it into stocks and bonds.
Wait, hold it. Just back up.
Yeah. Carol knew she was going to ask that. She anticipated it. Carol said, before it could even come up, Carol said, Mr. McCreary isn't going to pay me. He's going to put all my babysitting money into stocks and bonds. My mother didn't know anything about stocks and bonds, neither did we. But my mother knew that that's what rich people did. And it was over on the other side of town, we call it the rich side of town.
Right.
My mother didn't know anything about that neighborhood. She was the oldest of 7 children, grew up in a really poor family. My mother had one friend who was middle class, who she'd met when my father was still alive, and she influenced my mother, and so did the people that my mother cleaned for. The end of it was the last weekend, and that was near the real change in the McCreary time.
Well, what happened at the end of the summer?
We really were exhausted from our real summer weekends, and
the strenuous work of having fun with your friends.
Yeah, right. And those times when there was no cottage to go to, and we'd sleep out on the beach, and we were going home, and we headed up the back stairs. We always had to go in the back way. We headed up the back stairs, and we lived on the second floor.
Mm-hmm.
And we could tell before we turned the corner that our mother was outside the door, waiting for us. And we turned, and there she was. And she looked ready to kill. She looked absolutely furious. She said, "Well, how are you two, Ben?" And I thought, oh, God, she found out all about the summer cottage stuff. And Carol said, "You know where we've been, Ma, at the McCreary's." My mother said, "Oh, yeah, have you? Well, yes, are a couple of damn liars. I just got off the phone with Mrs. McCreary. She hasn't seen you in weeks."
My brother and I agree. We didn't breathe. We thought, oh my God, she's talked to them. And then, as quickly you realized, of course she didn't talk to them.
Carol got over it immediately and said, "Sorry, Ma, nice try. We just left the McCreary's 10 minutes ago." And we went in the house. My mother didn't say anything to us. We didn't say anything to her for the rest of the afternoon. And after that, we really stopped talking about the McCreary's.
Did she often claim that she'd run into the McCreary's?
Yes, that she talked to her, that she hadn't seen me. She did it so often. She believed this. It was amazing that she never questioned these things.
Well, why do you think she didn't question it?
I think she wanted it to be true, probably as much as I did.
It's interesting. When you invented them, it's as if you invented them in terms that would reassure your mom.
Yeah, I probably did. I don't think that... Well, no, it did. I'm sure it did occur to me that I wanted a family that would please her.
Is that because it would make her more likely to let you out? Or was there a part of it where you also were the kind of kid where you always needed to be reassuring her anyway?
Oh, I had to constantly reassure her. Always. You know, I mean, it isn't something I talk easily about, but that she really never liked me. That was a problem.
Is your mom still alive?
Yeah,
So how old is she now?
94.
How old are you?
I'm going to be 70 in another 10 days.
So have you ever come clean with her on this?
No, never. Do you want me to make my mother look like a liar?
Well, in a sense, you already have. It's just a question of whether she's going to know it.
All right. Yeah. No, it never crossed my mind to do it.
Are you serious? It's never crossed your mind?
To tell her no, never.
Because she wouldn't be able to laugh about it, it sounds like.
Not in any way. She might simply say that we were lying now, that there were McCreary's. And we were just saying that for some reason.
Does it make you sad that you can't have the kind of relationship with your mom where now that everyone's an adult, you can't come straight with all of it?
No. My sister and I think because of going away to school when I was so young. Let me back up a little bit. When I was 9, I came home on a Saturday afternoon, and my mother said, I'm sorry you weren't here because Father Sager, who was an Episcopal priest, was here visiting, and he found a very nice orphanage for you. And I said, but I'm not an orphan, Ma. She said, no, I know. I told Father Sager that. But he said, really you are, because I have to work all the time, and there's no one to take care of you. And I said, well, we take care of ourselves. She said, I told Father Sager that, but he said, not really. You go there. It'd be a good place for you. You go there. I was in my 30s before I understood why I went away to school when I was 10. I didn't have to. I could have not gone. I could have screwed up the test. I could have gone and gotten kicked out right away. I knew that. One of the things that our mother did with us, from the time we were very young, I can't remember before, but I know before I went to school, our mother used to say to us, when your father died, everybody told me to put the two of you in an orphanage. I didn't. And that was the biggest mistake of my life. So when the day came, I came home, she said, Father Sager found an orphanage for you. What I really did was say, you've been threatening me with this all my life, and now, damn it, I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And it felt safer.
Hmm.
I was scared as hell. I was one of 2 kids in the 6th grade. The other kid never showed up. I went to all classes alone for 6 weeks. And after 6 weeks, I went home. And it was late October, already dark in Buffalo, and around supper time, and I was walking down the street, and I loved my neighborhood. I knew everybody. And I looked, the lights were on, thinking, gee, it's warm in there. There's people, that's Sonny Colucci's house. It's this house, and they're in there. And I have a house, too. I go to school now, but I have a house, too. And I'm almost there. And I walked in the door, and I started to hug my mother, and my mother put out her hand to hold me back and said, let me ask you a question. When you're up there at that fancy school, you ever think about your mother lying here in bed, crying her eyes out every single night? You ever think about that? No, you never think about anybody but yourself. And I literally, from that moment on, have never asked my mother for anything, never looked to her for anything.
How old were you then?
I was 10.
Through the years, I've truly envied him that he has been able to do that, and that I have been unable to do that. Not believing that I'm going to get anything from her. I know I haven't. but I haven't been able to this moment to just take her out of my life completely.
How often do you see her now?
Do
Your
I
mom.
see her?
Yeah.
I am now seeing her twice a week. I mean, I call her every night, which is it's all something to do with me because she doesn't know that I call her every night.
Because she's becoming senile.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What do you think you've gotten by being the one caring for her?
One time when I was 35, I lashed out at her in such a way and told her how I felt about her. And she sat in a chair in the kitchen and she was crying. And I'd never even seen her cry before. And when I finally stopped talking, she said, "I did the very best I could." And I thought, oh my God, she did. Her best was so bad. Her best was so empty. But she couldn't do any better. I decided, and it helps me a lot, I have a great aunt that I just adored. And her mother, my mother's mother, who was wonderful. And my great-grandmother, who I didn't know, but who adored my mother. My mother slept in bed with her. I thought, I'm going to do this for the people that loved her. You know?
Yeah.
All of the people that really loved this little girl, I'm going to do it for them. And that feels fine to me.
You know what you're describing is you and your sister going off and pretending to babysit for these imaginary kids, but in fact you guys had a babysitting job, and it was for your mom.
That's right. My sister was the chief babysitter there, really. It's true.
At the time when you were kids, did you ever see it that way? Oh, we're taking care of mom. She thinks she's taking care of us, but we're taking care of her.
Oh yeah. There was a kind of humoring her and placating her, and when I was about 10, she gave me a first baseman's glove because I was going to be a major league ball player when I grew up, and she said, "You tell people who gave you the glove?" I said, "Yeah." You tell them how much it cost? I didn't, but I said, "Yeah." Said, "You tell them how long I had to work to buy that?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "You did not."
Well, let's set the record straight. Here we go. You're on the radio. How long did your mother have to work to buy you the baseball glove?
She had to work a week.
That's a long time.
Absolutely, Representative. I've thought about it since then. Have I ever given my kids a present that was worth a week's wages? No, I haven't.
Mr. Jones, what would have happened if there hadn't been the McCrearys?
The McCrearys seem absolutely inevitable. I never thought about what would happen if they hadn't been there.
Wow.
They had to be there. I still think they would be in let's see, there are three. They would be 56, 57 years old now. I've wondered where they're living, how they're doing.
Oh, where do you picture them?
I picture them doing very well and kind of dull now.
Really?
Yeah. I don't picture them as being terribly interesting. They're more conservative than their parents. But nice, pleasant, good people.
Where do you think they're living?
I'm afraid I think they're living in Florida.
They are. Not too far from where y'all are.
I may run into them in the store.
Myron Jones and his sister Carol Bove live in Florida. There is no way, they told me, that their mother would ever hear this story.